Hi, my Play, Learn, and Grow Together friends. It's Jane, and I'm getting ready for bed, and I'm going to share my bedtime routine with you. So we're going to start with PJ Family Story Time. And tonight we're going to have a story about family traditions. And that's what this storybook will be about. And you can think about some of the family traditions that you have in your family, from your culture, from your roots, from where your great-grandparents might have come from, and your grandparents, and your parents, and the ones you'll make one day with your family. So let's have that discussion in a little while. But first, let's say hello. 1, 2, 3. Hello, bear. Hello, dog. Hello, all my friends. We're glad you came to play. Yay! I'm so glad you're here with me tonight. So this book is called Cherry Pies and Lullabies. And there's the great-grandmother and the grandma and the mother and the child and, of course, her bear, just like I have a bear today. Oh, yeah, and you see Mr. Cow and the dog. That's right. Lots of friends. And this book, the author is Lynn Ricer. And I really like this book. Now, one thing about this book that's kind of special is it has kind of chapters about each of these family traditions. Something that was really special to them over the generations. Are you ready? Let's get started. This one's called, can you guess? Cherry pie. Somebody must have been making a cherry pie. Maybe it was one of their favorite dishes to make, and they passed it on through the years. So let's go. My great-grandmother baked a cherry pie for my grandmother. And when she made it, she had all these fresh ingredients. Can you name some of them? That's right. Flour, butter. Guess she needed some cherries and maybe some milk. And she rolled it with a roller. Maybe like when we play with Play-Doh a little bit. And they had to pick all the cherries. Can you see that in the picture? She was making it all from scratch. Well, my grandmother baked a cherry pie for my mother. And she already had the pie crust, and she used cans for her cherries. It was a little bit different, but still the same. And then my mother baked a cherry pie for me. What looks different there? She bought it at the store. And then guess what? I baked it. The little girl baked a cherry pie for the bear. And what did she use? Play-Doh. That's right. She made a cherry pie for her bear, as you can see here. And I'm going to show you the cherry pie right here. See? Because I baked one for my bear too, and I used Play-Doh. I made it from scratch, and I wanted to show that. And tomorrow, you're going to make some Play-Doh with me when you tune in tomorrow. Okay. Well, anyway, every time it was the same, but different. You remember? One was made from scratch. She took the flour, she took the cherries, she picked them, and the other one bought the crust and filled it with canned cherries. And the other one bought it from the store. And the little girl pretended to make her very own cherry pie to give to her bear out of Play-Doh. The next one is about, what do you see? Flowers. And I think she made something with those flowers. Have you ever done something like this? This was part of their tradition. think they made a crown just like my bear has out of flowers. Well, my great-grandmother made a crown of flowers for my grandmother. That was the great-grandmother again. And she picked them. They were wild flowers. And then my grandmother made a crown of flowers for my mother. And she picked them from her garden. One looks like she lived on a farm. The other one might have lived in the suburbs. And my mother made a crown of flowers for me. She bought them, where do you think? At the store. And I made a crown of flowers for my bear. And how do you think she made the crown for her bear? That's right, with paper and markers or crayons. Something that you can do. Yeah, I made something like that too. See? And it has a pattern. I made the flowers. And then you can put it together. It's pink and purple and blue. Pink, purple, blue. I made a pattern. Maybe you could do a pattern too. All you need is a little paper and some crayons and markers. And you just use your scissors and cut it and make it like a band. That's what she did for her bear. It was a simple activity. Well, next, I can turn my page. Every time it was the same, but different. They made some flowers from the fields, flowers. And another one was from the garden. And other flowers were bought at the store. And then we made a homemade one with paper and markers. Each time it was the same but different. That's what tradition is. It's carrying it on in lots of different ways. But it's still the same idea. We made a cherry pie, but a little differently. We made a flower crown, but maybe a little differently. Each time it might have been different. This one has to do with a quilt. Do you see a quilt anywhere? Maybe you have a special quilt. This one has a pattern. I made one for my bear too. My quilt is right here. Can you see? I just took a sheet, an old sheet or a pillowcase, and I cut it, and then I made some other patterns on it by cutting up another sheet that I had, and I made squares and diamonds. And that was easy. But you might have a quilt that's different. My great-grandmother gave a quilt to my grandmother. She sewed it by hand and she stitched it. But my grandmother gave a quilt to my mother and she sewed it on a sewing machine. So one hand stitched it with a needle and thread, and the other one had a sewing machine. The same, but different. And they might have had different fabric or different patterns. Well, my mother gave a quilt to me, and guess where she did? She got hers from the store. She bought it. Same thought. And then I made a quilt for my bear, sort of like how I did mine. They maybe had some felt or some old fabric, and they had some glue, and they put it together. They cut it. They just needed some scissors. So each time it was the same but different, and they decorated it. Every time it was the same but different. See, those are different quilts. And I bet the great-grandmother's quilt is still with the grandmother, and then the grandmother probably gave those quilts to the mother, and then the mother will give all the quilts to the little girl. That's how you have traditions. That's how you make those traditions. You carry them down. Well, this is the last one. It's a lullaby. And with lullabies, you don't need any materials. You just get to sing a song. And I think each time for them, the song, what do you think? There was the great-grandmother sang a lullaby to the grandmother. And the grandmother sang a lullaby to her mother. So the great-grandmother and then the grandmother, they sang a lullaby and they're in a rocking chair, getting ready for bed just like we are. It's a nice, soothing lullaby and with pictures of their babies and their families. And my mother sang a lullaby to me. And on the wall, you can see all the family. And I sang a lullaby to my bear. That's what the little girl did. And they were in their house getting ready for bed with all their friends. You see lots of animals too. I see a kitty cat going to sleep. They're really getting... And every time it was the same, but different. Are you ready to sing the lullaby together? Let's see if we can sing that together, okay? Lullaby and good night. Pie is sweet, stars are bright. Close your eyes until day. In your dreams laugh and play. Crowned with flowers, you sleep. Wrapped in love, soft and deep. Close your eyes now and stay. Wrap in love until day. Are they all sleeping? Are you sleeping yet? Well, that was a lullaby that the great-grandmother and the grandmother and the mother and the little girl all sang, and it was the same. And as you can see, the great-grandmother, she lived out in the rural area, more like in the farmland. And the grandmother lived more in the suburbs, sort of like where we live. It's not in the city, but it's out where there's lots of houses. And then the last picture is one that's in the city. Lots of buildings, lots of busyness. So even though things changed, some things stay the same, like the traditions that our parents give to us, and we carry them down to the next generation. And maybe you could even ask about your family tree. That's our family tree there. You can see where the great-grandmother, the grandmother, the mother, and the child and her bear. So, I have just a couple of questions and then it's time to go night-night. What were some of the traditions that you saw in the book? Can you name me 3? I'll give you a hint. One was the cherry pie, and she made it out of Play-Doh, remember? And what was this? The flower crowns that came from a field of flowers or from the store, and they weaved them together. And then there was the quilt that they made. Each time, and all you have to do is find some fabric and maybe some glue and then some scissors or maybe some markers and draw one for your bear or your special friend that you go to sleep with at night. Maybe it's a bunny, maybe it's a lammy, who knows? This is my friend, the bear. So, it's time to say goodnight. It's time to say goodnight. It's time to say good night. It's time to say good night. Good night, bear. Good night, dog. Good night, all my friends. I'm glad you came to play. Good night, and don't forget, stay tuned to tomorrow when we do an activity around this book together. And we'll get to do some Play-Doh. We'll see you then. Night.